Riley James was used to standing out, but not for the reasons people usually assumed. A sharp-dressed, composed, and proudly out LGBTQ plus tech consultant, Riley had spent years building a reputation based on professionalism, problem-solving, and presence. That morning she arrived at the Grand Avalon Hotel, an upscale venue hosting the annual Inclusive Technology Summit, with one thing on her mind: delivering a keynote that mattered. She stepped out of her rideshare and adjusted her navy blazer, a slim laptop case slung over her shoulder. The hotel's high glass facade shimmered under the morning sun. Inside, the marble floors glowed under pendant lights and uniformed staff bustled efficiently between guests. Riley moved with practiced ease, flashing her speaker badge at the registration table. "Welcome, Ms. James," the assistant at the table said, offering a branded lanyard. "You're in Ballroom B and they've preloaded your presentation." "Perfect, thank you." She took the lanyard and slipped it over her head, then made her way across the lobby, passing polished lounge areas and fresh floral arrangements. Her heels clicked with confidence as she entered the conference wing. Ballroom B was quiet at this hour. Most attendees would arrive later for morning sessions. Riley walked to the stage and checked the screen. Her keynote was ready, her slides crisp and centered. She exhaled, grateful. Everything was in place. But as she turned toward the rows of empty chairs, Riley noticed something. A hotel security officer stood just outside the ballroom entrance. Stocky, mid-50s, buzz-cut graying hair, pale skin, squinting in her direction, she offered a polite nod. "Morning." He didn't respond, just narrowed his eyes and walked off. Riley blinked, maybe nothing, maybe tired. She shook it off and returned to her laptop, but the moment settled in her mind like a small stone in a shoe. Over the next hour, Riley moved between the green room and the stage, testing equipment, reviewing notes, and greeting the AV staff. Everyone else treated her with professional courtesy. The tech lead even complimented her organization. But she noticed the same security officer reappear twice more, once lingering near the ballroom door, once standing behind the AV booth pretending to inspect something. Each time he watched her, each time Riley felt it. When she stepped out to grab coffee from the catering setup, she found him standing directly in her path. "You with the staff?" he asked. She paused. "No, I'm the morning keynote." "Riley James." He looked her over, face unmoved. "ID." She raised her lanyard. "Right here, issued at registration." He scanned it without acknowledging, then pointed at her laptop bag. "You bring that in with hotel clearance." "It's a conference laptop," she replied calmly. "Preloaded, I'm authorized to present with it." He stared for a beat too long. "Where are you from?" he asked next. "San Diego, why?" "No reason," he shrugged. "We've had issues with outside contractors before, can't be too careful." Riley held her ground. "Is there a specific concern, officer?" "Nope, just checking, you seem unfamiliar." She nodded slowly. "Well, I belong here." He didn't respond, just gave her a hard stare before walking away. She returned to the ballroom, quietly shaken but externally calm. Her fingers immediately went to her phone. She opened the Notes app and began documenting the time, date, appearance of the officer, and what he had said. This wasn't new, but it never felt easier. She texted her sister quickly, "All good, just weird vibes from hotel security. We'll check in later." Her niece had sent a gif of a cheering cartoon bear that morning. It popped up right under the message. Riley smiled, reminded why she showed up every day in spaces that didn't always welcome her. In the morning, the audience began trickling in. Industry professionals, DEI officers, developers. Riley took her place backstage. A volunteer clipped a mic to her blazer. "You're going to crush it," the AV tech said with a wink. When her name was announced, the ballroom erupted into applause. Riley stepped onto the stage, smiling steadily, and delivered a powerful, personal presentation about accessibility, identity, and the future of ethical technology. For 45 minutes, she held the room in the palm of her hand. Not once did she stumble, not once did she waver. After the closing applause, she was approached by a half-dozen attendees, some offering cards, some asking questions. It was the moment she always loved: real engagement, real connection. But as she stepped off stage and rounded the curtain, she nearly collided with him again. The security officer. He looked directly at her. "We're still going to need to verify your access. I need to check your credentials with management." Riley blinked. "You watch me just speak on stage." "That may be, still need to verify. This building has protocol." She kept her voice calm. "Is there someone from the organizing committee I can speak to about this?" "Sure," he said. "While we wait, come with me." She glanced behind her. A few attendees were watching, confused. She lifted her chin. "I'll wait right here, thanks." The officer's jaw flexed, his voice dropped. "Ma'am, I'm not asking." Before she could respond, someone called out, "Is there a problem here?" A woman in a tailored white blouse stepped forward, sharp haircut. Conference badge that read, Emily Clark, event board. Riley exhaled. Emily, the officer straightened slightly. We're just verifying credentials. Emily's eyes narrowed. She's our headliner, what exactly are you verifying? There was a pause, the officer didn't answer. Emily turned to Riley. Are you okay? Riley nodded, yes, thank you. Emily's voice hardened. If this continues, we'll escalate it ourselves. You have work to do, Riley. You're done here, officer. Nothing, just turned and walked off. Riley smiled faintly. But even as she did, she reached for her phone. She opened her notes app again. Another entry, another receipt. This wasn't over, but it had just begun. After the keynote, Riley tried to focus on the post-talk conversations, the handshakes, and the occasional selfie request from inspired young professionals. But that lingering tension, the way the security officer had looked at her, questioned her, doubted her, sat heavy behind her eyes. She slipped into a quiet hallway beside the breakout rooms and opened her email. There it was, confirmation from the event director, timestamps of her arrival, check-in, and assigned session slots, all above board, all perfectly documented. She forwarded the details to her own work email with a quick subject line, Documentation Avalon Incident Day 1. Then she saved it to a secure folder on the cloud. Riley had learned a long time ago, paper trails mattered. She glanced up. And there he was again. The same security officer, Darren Cole, according to the brass nameplate she had barely noticed earlier, was leaning against the hallway wall, arms crossed. Wasn't doing anything, just watching, Riley's jaw tight. She didn't flinch. Instead, she turned and walked back toward the networking lounge, her steps even and controlled. That afternoon, she had a private round table with other tech leaders in one of the smaller conference rooms. The mood there was electric, full of ideas, laughter, and stories about challenges in the field. For a brief window, she forgot. Until she exited and saw him again, posted by the hallway exit like a ghost stuck to her shadow. The other attendees noticed too. Does that guy work for the hotel or the NSA? One whispered with a smirk. Riley managed a laugh, but her stomach flipped. After all, she was the only one he was trailing. She approached the main desk at the event floor and asked to speak to hotel security management. A woman named Teresa met her near the elevators, her blazer crisp and her expression wary. Hi Teresa, I just wanted to ask about the behavior of one of your officers, Riley said. He's followed me multiple times today, questioned my credentials, and continued to hover even after I confirmed my role. I'd like to understand why. Teresa's smile faltered slightly. I'll look into it. Could you describe him? Mid-50s, stocky build, gray buzz cut, his badge read Darren Cole. Teresa's expression didn't shift much, but her answer came quickly. I'll speak with him, thank you for bringing it up. It felt rehearsed. Riley knew the difference between sincere concern and surface-level brush-off. She thanked Teresa anyway and made another note in her phone, timestamping the conversation. The next day, things escalated. Riley arrived early again for a breakfast panel and found that her access badge no longer opened the green room door. She tried twice, then a third time. Nothing. A nearby hotel staffer walked over. Need help. Riley explained, and the staffer used their override key. Strange, they muttered. You're listed as cleared. Inside, her reserved seat was gone, replaced by someone else's name. The event coordinator looked confused when she arrived. That's odd, the coordinator said, flipping through a clipboard. You were absolutely listed, must be a tech issue. But Riley knew better. Later that morning, while waiting for coffee, she overheard Darren Cole speaking with another guard. People slipping in thinking they're more important than they are, he muttered, just loud enough. The guard glanced toward Riley, then looked away. She took a slow breath, then another. When Emily Clark, the board member who had intervened the day before, arrived at the lounge, Riley wasted no time. Emily, can I borrow you for a moment? They stepped aside into a private corridor. He's still at it, Riley said quietly. My badge was deactivated this morning. My seat in the green room was reassigned. Emily blinked, then frowned. You think it was intentional? I do, and I've documented everything so far, but I need help. Emily didn't hesitate. Then I'll help. She pulled out her phone. We're not only sponsors. Our firm does security audits for this chain. If there's a pattern, we'll find it. Riley felt the first flicker of hope. That night, she received an encrypted email from Emily's office. It contained a redacted but clear HR memo from a prior event at a different hotel in the chain. Darren Cole had been accused of excessive scrutiny toward a non-binary guest speaker. The complaint had been resolved internally. Riley leaned back in her hotel room chair, staring at the screen. This was no one-time incident. This was a pattern, and she had just stepped into the middle of it. She saved the document. Then, for the first time since arriving, she allowed herself to feel angry, not explosive, not uncontrolled, but focused. Intentional, she opened a new note in her folder, titled Case Darren Cole, because now she knew what came next. By the morning of the third day, Riley had transformed her calm observation into tactical readiness. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages, some from colleagues checking in, some from new conference contacts, and a few from Emily Clark's team, forwarding redacted memos and archived complaints against Darren Cole from sister properties across the hotel chain. The pattern was forming fast and it was damning. But Darren wasn't slowing down. After an early panel on inclusive hiring practices, Riley made her way to the lobby coffee station. The ballroom doors had just opened for the next session, and the crowd thinned. That's when it happened. Darren Cole appeared from a side corridor and blocked her path. "We need to talk," he said, voice low but firm. Riley's shoulders tightened. "Is there a reason hotel security is interrupting a guest in a public area? You've been moving between rooms without checking in. Some of the staff say you've been accessing areas you're not authorized to be in." She blinked slowly. "That's not true. My credentials are active again and I've followed all guidelines." He crossed his arms, eyes narrowing. "I'm going to have to ask you to step into the office." Riley didn't move. Nearby, a couple of attendees noticed the exchange. One pulled out a phone subtly, pretending to check messages but clearly watching. "I won't be going anywhere without an event organizer present," Riley said. "You've harassed me 3 days in a row. I'm not playing that game." Darren took a half step forward, clearly trying to intimidate. "You're creating a disruption." "No," she said, louder this time. "You are, and I'm done being polite." Another phone camera came up. "Is everything okay here?" Hotel concierge asked, stepping in cautiously. He looked nervous. The tension in the air was thick. Riley turned to him. "Please get Emily Clark or any member of the event board right now." The concierge nodded and hurried off. Darren stood rigidly in place. 2 more attendees walked by, slowing, whispering. Word was spreading. A few minutes later, Emily arrived, accompanied by 2 conference organizers and a hotel administrator. Her face was stone. "Darren," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "Step back," as she was. "I've seen enough and we've reviewed the footage. You've made yourself a liability. Please report to your supervisor immediately." He looked ready to argue, but the hotel administrator nodded toward him. "Now, Darren." Darren's jaw clenched. For a moment, Riley thought he might explode, but then he turned and walked away, every step heavy. Emily turned to Riley. "Let's talk in private." They entered a nearby conference room. Emily locked the door behind them. "We pulled badge data, CCTV footage, and internal logs," she said. "Your access was revoked manually by his supervisor at his request. The green room seat, same story." Riley nodded. "I assumed as much." Emily pulled out a file. "There are now 5 similar incidents across different properties. Most were buried quietly. We found 2 former employees willing to speak off the record." "That's enough for legal action," Riley said, "or at least a formal complaint." "It is, and I've already spoken with our legal team. If you're willing, we can initiate an internal inquiry that puts this in the public record." Riley exhaled. "Let's do it." That night, Riley filed a formal discrimination complaint with the hotel chain's corporate office. She submitted all her documentation, emails, timestamps, videos, names of witnesses, and every note she'd taken. Emily's team attached their investigation. The next day, local media picked up whispers of the altercation. A tech journalist who had been attending the summit tweeted about what they'd seen in the lobby. By afternoon, hashtags began trending. She belonged in Tech Summit Truth. Riley turned off her notifications and focused on her closing panel. She wasn't going to let this man or this system derail the work she came to do. As she stepped on stage for her final panel, applause erupted, more than polite, more than professional. It felt like solidarity. She sat on the panel, answered questions about tech equity, and spoke with the same clarity and confidence she'd always carried. But now she knew everyone was listening for more than insight. They were listening for the truth. After the panel, dozens of attendees approached her, not just to praise her talk, but to quietly say they'd seen what happened, that they had her back, that they were tired of pretending this kind of thing didn't happen in places with glass walls and polished floors. By the time she left the hotel that night, she wasn't just a speaker anymore. She was a witness, a record keeper, a changemaker, and she had just made her first move. Riley woke up to dozens of messages. Some were from colleagues across the country who had seen the viral post about the confrontation in the lobby. Others were from event attendees thanking her for standing firm. A few came from strangers sharing their own stories of being profiled or dismissed at industry events. It was overwhelming, but also empowering. She scrolled through the trending hashtags: She Belonged, Tech Summit Truth, and Stand with Riley. The footage from the lobby was everywhere now: multiple angles, clean audio, Darren's aggressive tone, Riley's unwavering calm, and Emily's commanding presence when she arrived to shut it down. It was undeniable now. Riley grabbed her notebook and opened her laptop. She began compiling everything into a master file: incident notes, witness names, timeline logs, screenshots of tweets, and a list of press outlets that had contacted her. She wasn't trying to become a public figure, but she wasn't going to let the narrative slip out of her hands either. A knock on the door broke her concentration. It was Emily. We've got about 20 minutes before our internal meeting with the hotel's executive team, she said. Their legal counsel will be present. My team will be on the call too. You ready? Riley nodded. I've been ready since day one. The hotel's penthouse boardroom overlooked the city skyline. Inside, 4 members of upper management waited, including the regional operations director and 2 legal reps. The tension was immediate. Emily introduced everyone. We're here to discuss the complaint filed by Ms. Riley James against your security officer Darren Cole and the administrative decisions surrounding her credential access and green room assignment. The hotel's legal counsel responded first. We acknowledge the seriousness of this matter. We are conducting an internal investigation, but we'd like to understand Ms. James' perspective. Riley spoke clearly, firmly, and without anger. She laid out the facts, the questioning, the badge deactivation. The repeated surveillance, the confrontation in the lobby, the crowd, the footage. I followed every protocol, she said. I had credentials, I checked in, I was the keynote speaker, and I was treated like a threat. The operations director shifted uncomfortably. We regret that this happened. Emily leaned forward. Regret is a start, but we're here to discuss accountability. The conversation shifted to policy. Riley and Emily demanded the hotel provide a written public acknowledgement and commit to revising their security training procedures. Emily also requested an independent third-party audit of discrimination complaints across all properties. The hotel reps pushed back slightly, legal liability precedent, but the public backlash had already begun. They knew they were cornered. By the end of the meeting, the hotel agreed to a formal investigation with third-party oversight and promised a statement within 48 hours. Back in her room, Riley opened her email to find something unexpected, an invite to appear on a national morning news show. She stared at it, then closed the lid. It wasn't about the spotlight, it was about the system, and for that she needed to stay focused. That evening she and Emily sat down with 2 of the former hotel employees who had come forward. They shared stories of quiet cover-ups, HR deflections, and NDA buyouts. One had left the industry altogether. I'm here because someone finally didn't stay quiet, one said. I wish I had done the same. Riley listened, took notes, thanked them, promised to do right by their courage. The next morning, a fresh email came in from the hotel's corporate office. Subject, interim findings and action plan. They had placed Darren Cole on unpaid suspension pending further review. A new regional policy was being drafted, and the CEO himself wanted to meet with Riley the following week. They had also begun scheduling listening sessions across their national locations to address workplace bias. It wasn't a full victory, but it was a start. Later that day, as she sat in the conference's closing circle with other speakers and organizers, someone passed her a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. Thank you for standing firm. Because of you, I feel like I belong here too. Riley folded the note slowly. Her eyes burned, but she didn't cry. Instead, she smiled. She had come to deliver a talk on inclusive design. Instead, she had helped redesign the room itself. By the time Riley left the conference hotel and returned to San Diego, the story had taken on a life of its own. What started as a confrontation in a hotel lobby had grown into a broader conversation about systemic profiling, abuse of authority, and what it meant to create truly inclusive professional spaces. The hashtags had not faded. If anything, they had gained traction. She Belonged now accompanied stories from people across the country who had experienced similar treatment. Riley was tagged in thousands of posts. Bloggers, advocacy groups, and journalists were writing about her story and, more importantly, about the system it exposed. But Riley wasn't interested in being a viral sensation. She was interested in change. Back home, she took a week off from consulting to regroup. Her apartment was quiet, filled with warm light and the hum of her coffee maker. On the walls were framed photographs of her niece, her late father's Navy photo, and a certificate from a community advocacy group honoring her past work. It reminded her why she couldn't let Darren Cole's actions be swept away. Emily's team continued to send her documents, former employee complaints, internal memos, anonymized testimonies from whistleblowers. Riley cataloged them all, building a digital case folder. She treated it like a job because it was. This wasn't just about her anymore. Through her own network, Riley quietly reached out to a nonprofit legal clinic that specialized in civil rights litigation. They agreed to review her case and explore legal pathways that wouldn't just punish Darren, but hold the hotel chain itself accountable. A week later, she sat in a Zoom meeting with a team of lawyers. One of them, a woman named Veronica, shared her screen. There's a pattern, Veronica said. 5 properties, 8 complaints, 3 settlements, each swept under the rug. It's not isolated, it's institutional, Riley nodded, and they only acted when public attention forced their hand. Exactly, Veronica replied. That makes them vulnerable to public accountability, but it also opens a window for civil case. Not just for you, but potentially as a class action if other victims come forward. Riley sat back in her chair. It was more than she expected, but it was everything she'd hoped. Let's move forward, she said. Within days, the legal team began reaching out to other complainants. A secure tip line was set up. Several people responded immediately, sharing their own harassment and mishandling by hotel staff at various properties. Meanwhile, Riley's story was picked up by a major weekend news magazine show. Though she initially declined interviews, she agreed to provide a written statement. Her words were shared at the close of the segment. "This isn't about me being treated unfairly. This is about systems that allow it to keep happening. I don't want a headline, I want a policy change." The segment prompted even more people to come forward. The nonprofit legal team added 2 new attorneys to handle the volume of complaints. A civil rights organization offered to co-sponsor the case. The hotel chain, feeling the pressure, released a second public statement outlining vague commitments to better training and internal reviews. But by then, the public wasn't satisfied with corporate buzzwords. Riley's insistence on documentation and strategy had created an expectation: transparency, accountability, and reform. In early spring, Riley was invited to speak at a panel on corporate responsibility and public accountability. The event was hosted by a university in Los Angeles. Though she hesitated at first, she accepted. Standing on stage beside civil rights lawyers, DEI experts, and other advocates, Riley spoke from the heart. "This started because one man saw me and decided I didn't belong, but the real harm wasn't just in what he did. It was in the silence of the system that protected him. We don't need more apologies, we need new architecture. We need systems that protect the people doing the right thing, not the ones abusing their power." The crowd gave her a standing ovation. Afterward, a young non-binary student approached her with tears in their eyes. "You said what I've never been able to. Thank you," Riley smiled. "You don't have to wait to say it, you just have to decide you won't be quiet anymore." That night, as she looked over the growing case folder, she didn't feel tired. She felt focused, energized, ready, because now she had more than evidence. She had momentum, she had support. And the truth was no longer just a file on her laptop. It was a movement. By the time April rolled in, Riley's legal team had compiled enough testimony to file a formal civil complaint, not just against Darren Cole, but against the hotel chain's corporate office. The lawsuit was framed not as a personal injury claim, but as a systemic discrimination and civil rights violation case. It demanded accountability, transparency, and a fundamental overhaul of the chain's internal reporting procedures. The day the filing went public, Riley received hundreds of messages. Not all were supportive, some were aggressive, laced with thinly veiled threats or attempts to discredit her. But the majority were from people, many LGBTQ+, who saw in her case something familiar: the daily erosion of dignity by people who believed they had the power to get away with it. Emily checked in regularly. So did Veronica. Both became more than allies. They were now anchors in a storm Riley hadn't fully prepared for. The pressure mounted as media coverage increased. A prominent journalist published a deep-dive investigative piece titled "The Hallways of Power: Discrimination Behind Hotel Doors." Riley's story was the lid. Corporate damage control began immediately. The hotel chain's CEO, under fire, gave a carefully worded interview stating that the company took all allegations seriously. He announced the formation of an internal review board, but offered no commitment to independent oversight. Riley's legal team responded with public clarity. Apologies without accountability were meaningless. They demanded third-party audits and the release of anonymized discrimination complaint statistics over the last 5 years. That demand struck a nerve. 2 days later, an anonymous whistleblower leaked internal memos to a news outlet. The memos revealed that the chain's legal department had previously flagged complaints like Riley as non-actionable reputational risks. At least one manager had received a bonus for successfully resolving a discrimination case by pushing the victim into signing a non-disclosure agreement. It was all out now. Public backlash exploded. Advocacy groups called for a boycott. Several conferences pulled their upcoming events from the hotel's venues. And on social media, the same hashtags resurfaced, stronger than before, this time joined by another: "Break the Lobby." Despite the whirlwind, Riley stayed grounded. She continued to mentor young professionals, teach weekly virtual seminars, and spend evenings with her niece. Each small act reminded her of why she'd started this fight in the first place. Then in late April, Riley received a call from Veronica. "They want to settle," she said. 7 figures, NDA attached. Riley didn't respond immediately. Veronica continued. "We can push them, they're hemorrhaging reputation, but I need to know what you want." Riley looked out her apartment window, the sunset reflecting off downtown glass towers. I want change, not a check." The next day, Riley's team responded with a counteroffer: no NDA, public apology, restitution for every verified complainant, and a signed commitment to implement the third-party reforms. It was bold, unprecedented, and it worked. The hotel chain, facing growing financial and political pressure, caved. They agreed to all terms. A week later, Riley stood in front of a podium flanked by civil rights attorneys and national advocacy groups. She read from a statement. "This resolution is not the end of something. It's the beginning. No one should have to prove their humanity. No one should have to record their trauma to be believed. We are building something better for everyone who walks into a place and wonders if they'll be treated like they belong." The room erupted in applause. The next morning, Riley's face appeared on the front page of major national papers. She was called an advocate, a changemaker, a reluctant hero. But Riley didn't let the headlines define her. She went home, made breakfast for her niece, and walked her to school. She answered emails from former strangers who now called her sister, mentor, friend, and she opened a new document on her laptop. Title: Blueprints for Belonging, because tearing down the old house was only the first step. Now it was time to build something new. The press conference had come and gone, but the ripples from Riley's fight were still unfolding. What had begun as a confrontation in a hotel lobby had become a legal landmark, a corporate reckoning, and a cultural turning point. The weight of it didn't hit Riley until a week later, when things grew quiet. No more interviews, no more statements, no more urgent calls from Veronica or Emily, just silence. But it wasn't the silence of isolation. It was the silence of a job completed, of a chapter closed. And for the first time in a long time, Riley could breathe. She spent more time with her niece, walking her to school every morning and helping with science fair projects in the evenings. Her sister Dana insisted on Sunday dinners, saying, "You've done enough saving the world for now, come eat." Riley laughed more in those weeks than she had in months, but she hadn't forgot. She kept a whiteboard in her home office where she scribbled notes and ideas. Titles like Open Access Policy Models and Hospitality Equity Framework filled the margins. She drafted emails to civil rights organizations, universities, and grassroots groups. The idea was simple: take everything she'd learned, every loophole, every barrier, every piece of data, and turn it into a toolkit others could use. Something that would outlast the headlines. She called it Blueprints for Belonging. It started with an outline, then a digital draft, then a collaborative document where advocates and experts could contribute in real time. Riley hosted virtual roundtables, gathering voices across the LGBTQ+ spectrum and beyond. People from racial justice organizations, disability advocates, labor union reps. Together, they worked to define the practical structures that would force institutions to not just acknowledge bias, but to uproot it. Meanwhile, the hotel chain continued rolling out reforms. Under pressure from Riley's settlement agreement and public scrutiny, they launched transparency dashboards, published their complaint metrics, and implemented third-party audit systems. They even invited Riley to sit on an external advisory board. She declined. "If you want my input, use the framework we built," she said. "This was never about me holding a seat at your table, it's about you rebuilding the table." The media called it one of the most impactful corporate discrimination settlements in recent history. Law schools requested permission to use the case in coursework, and Riley began receiving speaking requests not just from DEI conferences but from business schools, tech summits, and even police departments. She accepted selectively. Only if they agreed to give free access to underrepresented attendees and publish their commitments publicly. Her story became a lens, but she made sure it never became the focus. In late summer, she traveled to Chicago to keynote a civil rights law symposium. The event was packed. Hundreds of students, professors, attorneys, and organizers filled the auditorium. Riley stood at the podium in a simple black blazer, holding nothing but a wireless mic. People often ask what it's like to be the target of discrimination. What they don't ask is what it's like to stay calm while it happens. To stay composed enough to document it, to outmaneuver it, to build a case that might finally be taken seriously, if the conditions are just right. It's exhausting, but it's also a skill. One too many of us are forced to learn. But here's the thing: I don't want to be good at surviving injustice. I want to be part of building systems where no one has to. The crowd stood and clapped for almost a full minute. After the talk, a law student approached her with tears in her eyes. "I'm studying civil rights law because of your story. I used to think no one would listen if I spoke up, but you made it feel possible." Riley thanked her, and she meant it. Later that evening, as she sat in her hotel room, ironically, one she had personally vetted through a new list of equity-certified properties, she reflected on how far she'd come. She opened her laptop and read through some of the submissions to the Blueprints platform. A hospitality worker from New York wrote about how their hotel now had gender-neutral staff policies. A conference planner in Atlanta said they switched venues after reviewing Riley's case. A school district in Oregon requested access to training materials she'd co-authored. These were not headlines. These were results, and they were just the beginning. When the fall season rolled in, Riley launched a nonprofit called Foundations First, dedicated to creating equity models across industries. The advisory board included activists, policymakers, and working-class professionals from fields often ignored. They partnered with legal aid groups, offered consulting to small businesses, and even helped a labor union craft anti-discrimination provisions in new contracts. All of it grew out of one moment in a hotel lobby, one refusal to stay silent, one woman saying, "I belong here." By winter, Riley had returned to consulting part-time, but on her own terms. She charged corporate clients top dollar and offered her services free to community centers, youth shelters, and local libraries. She became less of a headline and more of a foundation herself. One day in December, she received a package. Inside was a printed hardcover draft of blueprints for belonging, sent by one of her collaborators. Inside the cover, a note. "This isn't the end of your story. It's the manual for someone else's beginning." Riley held it in her hands for a long time. She thought about all the moments she could have let it go. When Darren first questioned her, when her badge was disabled, when she was offered money to stay quiet, any one of those could have been the end, but she chose the long road, and now others would have a map. She placed the book on her shelf. Next to it was a framed photo of her niece holding a cardboard sign from a school protest that read, "My aunt belongs everywhere." Riley smiled. Justice wasn't a destination, it was a blueprint, and it was meant to be shared.